The calendar. The calendar is an instrument to measure how much time is passing, and it's most of the time based on 1 year. That is the time which the Earth takes to go once around the Sun, and then also a month, which is approximately the time the Moon takes once around the Earth, and then also a day, which is the time the Earth needs to spin once around its own axis. These are the basements basically for all calendars. The Sumers had one 5,000 years ago, and that was based then with the months on the time the Moon needs to circle around the Earth. The problem by that is that the Moon needs 29.5 days, and that should also fit together with the 1 year the Earth goes once around the Sun. And it doesn't fit. 29.5 days gives after 12 months too little, after 13 moon months too much of a year. So it doesn't really work to make it on the moon based, this month length of 29.5 days. It doesn't work. It's a little or too much for that whole round. And the 30 months and so on, it doesn't really work. Julius Caesar then was reigning 46 before Christ in the Roman Empire, and the astronomer Sosthenes advised him to make another calendar, and that calendar looked a little different. It was based on 365 days and 0.25 days, so 365 and a quarter day, and that were 12 months, and each of them had 30 and 31 days. And then a leap year, a leap day every 4 years in a leap year, there's been 1 day more. There's a little problem with it. The Earth doesn't need 365.25 days to circle around the Sun, but 365.24 days. 24.22. This is important for nothing. So the Julian calendar was a little bit off. And then in the year 1582, I think was it, when Pope Gregory VIII was the Pope, where it was off by 10 days. Now it is, so the Earth stands like that in the sky, and the Sun hits it in the summer, like that in the northern half. And now the northern half of the Earth has summer because the Sun hits directly all the cities in the north, of North America, Northern Asia, Europe, and so on. And when this Earth's on the other side, the wet stands away and the Sun also hits it, but it comes completely through the side and goes a long way through the atmosphere. And now it is winter there because the Sun is not traveling directly to it, or when it's like that, when it hits also better like that, but it goes not as it is on the southern half in the other part, the other way around, it goes through the side for a long time, and the Sun is much colder. And also there's much less sun because it's the hotter in the shadow. And that is the reason why there's a winter, and on the southern half of the Earth it's the other way around. When Europe has here summer, the southern half has winter. It's in the shadow basically of the Earth. The other way around, when the southern half of the Earth, Southern America and Australia has summer, and the northern half has winter. Now, and if on the equinox the world is standing after 3 months on the 21st March or the 23rd September in the middle, then the Sun hits it directly in the middle and all have day and night the same length. Now the problem with it was that this Julian calendar was based on 365.25 days, not 365.2422 days. It was off now by every century by 1 day. Almost, it's 0.2422. Basically it was off then by 10 days. So it was then set on the 11th March. Now it's the middle, but it was actually the 21st March or something. It was off by 10 days. And then was said we're adding now every century, not a leap year, I think was it. So every century there's not a leap year. Every 4 years there's a leap year, but not if it's the 100th year. Not if it's 1900, 2000, 2100, 2200, except that years divided by 400. If it is 2000, 2000 divided by 400, then there is a leap day. Because it's 24.2422. The 2 is there 1/5. That's why it's off after 15 centuries when Pope Gregory VIII was there by 10 days and not 15, because it has to be done, the leap year, every 400 years. It has to be just screwed every 300 years, something like that. So that's why it was off. And then it was introduced like that. So there is now 365 days, 0.2522, and we have 365 days with 12 months and 31 days and 30 days. And every 4 years there's a leap year, except it is every 100 years there's not a leap year, the 100 years, except that year is a 400 year, like 400, 800, 1200, 1600, 2000, 2400 days again. And that way, one calendar was made which should work. That is according to the Reader's Digest Library of Modern Knowledge, Book 1, Part 1, Structure of the Universe, written by Ian Ridworth and John Shakespeare, on the page 51.